Welcome to another week of the High Tech Podcast with me, Josh, that's me, and...
Me, Will, that's you?
Nope. We almost nailed it. Gosh. Okay.
Try again next time.
Well, guys, welcome to this episode. We are super excited because this is a slightly different episode than normal, as it's not released on the day that you're used to getting it. And that's because we're interviewing somebody this time. So, yeah, first interview. I'm pretty excited. We know people, sort of.
A person.
A person.
We know a person.
A person. Maybe by the time you listen to this, we know two. Okay, so pretty pumped though. We're interviewing the co-founder of Coggle, and that's cool because there's two. And as you'll find out,
we got one of the two.
Only two. But we're excited about this. We talked about Coggle in our episode, right? Well, so we're pretty pumped about talking with him. We're going to talk a little bit more about what their tool does, the history of how they got started, some of the inspiration and how they developed the tool and keep it running. And quite frankly, I'm pretty excited for this for you guys because it's a cool conversation with somebody who's constantly like developing an app, but like on a simple, laser focused method. And he really talks a lot about what that looks like. And I think we can benefit from learning for that about how to use technology. I think there's a lot of cool stuff we can grab from that. So with that, I'm going to stop talking because who wants to listen to me when we've got somebody to talk to? So let's check it out. Let's listen to our interview with the co-founder of Coggle.
Thank you, folks, for tuning in to our first interview at the High Tech Podcast. We're excited today to have a representative from Coggle, not just a representative, but one of two co-founders of Coggle. Very excited to introduce James Crosby. James, you here with us?
Hi.
Awesome. So we've got him. He's here. He's going to get comfortable with us, and we're going to dig into a couple questions to help you all just understand a little bit more about Coggle and how you might use it in your classroom. James, a little bit of background. So it's you and one other person. What's Coggle made up of?
Yeah, well, I guess we kind of give this impression of being a bit of a bigger company than we really are, but it's the two of us co-founders who kind of run the business.
Yeah.
So whenever you if you're emailing Coggle support, it's normally me pretending to be an anonymous support person who's replying to you.
Josh and I have never done that before.
Yeah, never.
I love those inboxes, inbox@something.com, and it's just one person. It's one person managing it. What would you say is kind of the hardest part about splitting that responsibility between two people?
It's kind of hard. You never get a break. Like, it's a bit relentless. Yep. And people on the other side, especially of support, we try and give the impression of being a bigger company because it's kind of what people expect. But then when people are dealing with a big company, they're not thinking so much that it's an actual person on the other end of the support sometimes.
Yeah.
Hey, when I talk to those like automated support chatbots, that's my fight. I'm like,
is this a chatbot? No, it's a person.
I have spent time with those before, just saying as much as possible, like, give me a human. Give me a human. Give me, hoping that if I send a message enough times in a row, it might trigger some automation.
It's probably some poor person's actually typing the bot's responses to you.
just literally trying to get at me. So you guys do this too, folks. How long has Coggle been around?
So the story basically is, it's actually three of us. Technically, the third guy is a mechanical engineer, not a software engineer, so he's kind of more of an advisor and a tiebreaker.
Cool. Okay.
And we, out of university, we were trying to build a different business, which was robotic submarines, of all things.
Oh.
And we were doing like
totally like mind mapping.
yeah. totally different things. And we're doing like some market research project to kind of prove out the market and figure out what exactly we were going to do. We had some experience building that sort of thing from university. In the process of doing our research, we basically found that it was really hard to collaborate on that sort of thing with the existing tools out there at that time, which was early 2013. Wow. And the market we were thinking of building a business in was going to be like really hard and expensive, and we were not going to end up owning any of the business if we persevered. So
Wow.
we kind of just
You're just
built-
looking at it like it's just like, oh, that's just a failure to start. Great.
well, it's not. I mean, I'm still actually really interested in that. It's kind of ocean technology side
Cool.
of tech,
Okay.
but it's a very expensive business. And if you're
Yeah.
trying to, you need like a lot of money to do anything in the ocean, and that means it's very hard. But software, like you can just sit at the computer and it takes your time. There's no real
Coding
capital.
servers.
Yeah.
That's
Well, with
great.
AWS, we're all hosted on AWS. So for a long time, it was, well, Coggle was free. It was $100 a month or something off my credit card that was paying for Coggle. Then we only introduced like the paid plans when it started to get a bit more than we could sustain ourselves.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, this is, I think, maybe like one of those questions that I wouldn't have expected to think through, but like in that moment where you're swiping your credit card or auto renew, whatever, but like you're paying that every month, is it the competition? Is it the entrepreneurial spirit that motivates you, or is there some of that like altruism, like, hey, we're doing something good, this is going to get, like, what's that balance for you?
No, it was definitely at that time. I mean, there was always the potential, like, oh, we know this could be a business, but it was a lot more like, this is cool. We're getting messages from people saying they love using it, and it's great to put it out there. And we know, I mean, if you make something, you have to pay for it. Then people who would find it useful aren't going to use it. So keeping it free was kind of something we really wanted to do.
That's really cool. So, I mean, technically we really have gotten into what got you into like the starts of all this.
Now, I do have a question to tie into that. So like, you're coming out of this, you're looking for something to collaborate in. What drove you to making the collaboration tool a mind map tool? I'm curious why what drove you in that direction?
Right. So mind maps, like, or even so, for a long time we didn't even use the word mind map on Coggle, because we think it comes with a lot of baggage that it's kind of, there's like a proper way of doing mind mapping that where we like, you can do whatever you want in a Coggle. It doesn't have to be a mind map, but it is a mind map. It's what people understand, right? But the tree structure of a mind map works really well for collaboration, because unlike like a linear text document in like Google Docs, if you've got 2 or 3 people editing it, you kind of break the narrative structure of the document really easily. It's really hard to actually build something coherent. Whereas when you've got that tree structure there, everybody can edit their part of it, and it doesn't break the other branches. You can see the structure and edit the independent bits without stepping on someone else's toes.
Very easy to be just like, I got the red section for right now, you take the blue section, or
we're
on this topic, you go from there.
In Coggle, you get you get that the physical location of where someone's editing as well. So like the way the physical location is not just in a list where you move a section around or something, it breaks it. It's got that structure to it.
Yeah, and that's I think some of the educational value is that we can see folks starting with their lead topics and branch out and build sequentially. But if they decide to change that, they can always branch off, or they can change any of the titles back through. Everything's editable, easy to work with.
I mean, it's like how your brain works. Right? It takes a lot more effort to put something into a document that's easy to read and well structured than it does to put it into a mind map.
Right.
Yeah.
It's definitely just more natural sort of format.
So it was an easy to approach, easy to develop tool. You tried to stay away from mind map as a term, but you got back to it. What drove you to mind mapping eventually?
Oh, I think kind of just SEO, like
nature. We need people to find our website.
People, calling. I mean, it turned out pretty well that we called it Coggle. We called the documents Coggles as well, because when people search for Coggle, they find us, like it's our trademark, right?
Yeah.
But it does help that when people search for mind maps, they find us as well. So
I think that's the bigger win of a lot of like the ed tech names. Yeah, there's lots of jokes anymore about ed tech names like Swoop and Kahoot and Beep, and I don't know, like they get a little goofy at times. It probably exists. Google it. I bet you Beep is a thing.
Oh, almost certainly, yeah.
But to pick something like Coggle, like being able to associate with something that's tangible, concrete, but you can bring your own brand and identity to it, I think is really helpful for everybody involved. Because I think of a Coggle, like Coggle, you're piecing the wheel, you've got to get everything working together. As I hit my microphone, forgive me. And that's the idea of the mind map. Like if you have any piece not fit together, I mean, you lose the conceptual tree that you're trying to build. And so if you get all the pieces in line, it's, they're a coggle in the wheel. It makes sense to me. I like that association.
Cogs in the wheel, cognition, kind of lots of kind of associations with the word.
This is
cognition in there.
Okay. This is showing me how not deep I've thought about your name. So that's good.
Well, I mean, I don't want to pretend this was like a master plan. It was like from a list of sort of 20 or 30 names that we had. Which one can we get a good domain for? That was the deciding factor, right?
Josh and I know that struggle.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So pivoting here into the second question, take this however works best for you. We got a little bit of some in our prep about some background of like what you're doing and why you're doing it, but like, what makes you love Coggle? Like, you did have to transition out of this ocean tech and you do have maybe some preference to that, but this is working well for you. So what brings kind of that passion to the project?
So, I mean, it, like throughout the whole, like 8-9 years now, we've just had an enormous amount of feedback from people using Coggle who just saying like, wow, thank you. This has helped me so much. Like people who've said like, I used it all through nursing school. Thanks. I've been able to do it without you. Oh, wow. And that kind of feedback just like blows you away. Like it's hard to imagine something that's like we just made for ourselves can be that useful for somebody else. Like even though like we can see that we can look at the stats and see how many people are using it, but it's still hard. Like that sort of feedback really brings it back to real people, and it's kind of like a huge driver to keep it going.
Yeah, I know my work, some of it, I don't often get to see the tangible results. I know how many faculty I have supported, how many faculty I've worked with on projects, but I'm not in the classrooms to see the smiles or to see the check mark. So when you get that feedback, I definitely get it. Like I'd eventually sometimes get some word back from students or from faculty from students. And it's a really encouraging moment. Now, do you feel like there's something more to that passion for you? Like you are driven to go get your PhD yourself, or is it really fitting for you to be where it is? And you hope to just kind of develop it as is?
Well, I don't think, I mean, a PhD definitely isn't for me. I'm kind of done with formal education. I think way too much of that. But I mean, I don't know if I said I studied engineering. So four years of hardcore maths is enough.
And I did my master's degree. I've done 6 years of formal education. I think I'm done. Like I don't want to do my PhD either. I get it.
But yeah, so like it is, I think people are often at like, we don't really have plans for big new features, but that doesn't mean we're not developing Coggle. Like I think the sort of low-key maintenance and keeping everything smooth and just up to date as technology in the world changes around it is kind of an ongoing task. You'd be amazed how much like behind the scenes, like if you look at a Coggle document, actually the very first Coggle document ever made still loads and still looks exactly the same, right? But behind the scenes, everything's been rewritten. Like what you see in the browser, all that code's been rewritten twice, and all the back end code on the server has been written like 3 times. Or like all the data's been migrated like from one country to another country and like different servers and data centers, and like
that's amazing.
You never see any of that stuff, but that's what sort of keeps it running quickly and smoothly and efficiently as well. As like being a mostly free product, we have to make sure it works for millions of people. Yeah, without costing a fortune. So that
is that your user base? Are you like tens of millions, 7 million? What do you?
I don't know exactly. It's must be well over 5 million by now. 5 million was a few years ago.
Wow.
Okay. Wow.
Hey, that's awesome.
I'm just stressed out listening to it.
Well, I'm not.
No.
My phone's not going crazy, so everything's
Yeah.
everything's fine.
You're good. Oh man, it shows in the tool. I think like the to your point, like I do a lot of stuff with user experience and things like that in my area. And what I love about your guys' tool is that it is simple. Like it's easy to just kind of click in and use things, and it shows that you're keeping it like you don't need flashy features. You're keeping it up to date with the core idea of it and just making sure it fits with what good user experience is right now. And I think that's cool.
I mean, I'm sure you use products where like you open the interface and it's just like full of buttons and you've got no idea how to do it. It's just overwhelming.
Yeah, totally.
There was actually a very short amount of time there where I was leaving my old institution where Josh currently works, and I was setting up a software that I left behind that
oh, I know what you're talking about. It's gross.
One of two. I'm not sure if you know.
I don't know which one you're mentioning right now.
But we had a software in place at that institution, and it had failed. There was a big tragedy, and I had wrapped that negotiation and that contract and switched us back to a contract or a vendor we had before them. And I very specifically did it because I knew it relied on automation, and their automation was fine. And we didn't like that they didn't have a lot of features at the time. We wanted more. We wanted to do more. It was going to be so much better and robust. But I knew I was leaving. They didn't know I was leaving yet. And I was the stopgap when the automation didn't work. So they needed something that would be automated, them not knowing there wasn't going to be a person there. That software, when you would open it up and go to look for reports or try and like see evaluations and stuff in it, literally was mostly just hyperlinks and gray buttons.
Right.
And they sold themselves for a good dime in, 2016, 2017. I'm like, this is not user experience. You are just keeping a product you've had for 10 or 20 years at least.
Probably every single one of those buttons probably had a different customer who really wanted it, and they all wanted it to be like easily accessible, and that's sort of how software dies through enterprise customers.
What a thought, man. Yeah, the people who pay are the ones who kill us.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, like if we built everything into Coggle that everybody asks for, it would look just like that, because everyone wants something slightly different. And
that's fair.
The truth is, like, the best product for everybody is something that hasn't quite got everything that everybody wants, because everything you add also takes something away.
You're
preach it.
I want to talk to more, coder founders at this point. You've got the great insights.
Well, I think my view on this might be different from some people, but that's the Coggle philosophy.
You're speaking my soapbox, man. I love it. Like, it's great. I'm really curious. Like, for you guys, this is going off script, Will. So go with it, since we always follow our script so closely in the podcast. So how do you guys make that determination? So you guys aren't adding a lot of new features, but like, how do you guys make that call about when you want to invest in something you're going to throw into Coggle? Because obviously you made some changes and things that is not what it looked like when it first started, right? So how do you make that call as a team?
So the first thing is like, how does it fit into the interface? Really, I think is where we start. Like there's like been the little toolbar you get sort of inside the text editing box. That didn't exist in the first version of Coggle. And actually finding like a way to do that little toolbar neatly where you need it is what we had to figure out before we could add the features like the buttons for links and bold text and stuff. That, I mean, it's Markdown formatting, which I think you use Notion, like you're familiar with Markdown formatting. So we always had Markdown support. The functionality for links and bold text and stuff was always there. But working out how to do that sort of interface for it neatly is what we had to figure out first before we could make it as a user presented feature, if that makes sense.
So all your feedback, all your user forums are saying, give us links, give us Markdown. And you're like, you have them. We just want to make sure it's pretty and useful when we do it.
Yeah, well, basically, especially for links. Yeah, it really was like that.
We know how to do this. We just have to make sure it's good.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's cool. Well, that's a lot of really awesome information about like the background and development stuff. Insightful, even for Josh and I think. You do have a good base of education users. We were talking about that before things got started today. What's the response? Like, do you get a lot of folks talking to you from education saying this is awesome, or is there a lot of like, in education, I know we can be pretty needy. Do we want too much? What's kind of the response from that?
That never happens.
We get like, I mean, I'd say like the biggest way we sort of understand how people are using Coggle is actually through like sort of tangentially related support requests. They're like, oh, I need help, or this thing failed and I tried to share it with my class of 50 students or something. And it's like, oh, so you were sharing it with a class of 50 people at once, right? That's sort of how we learn about what they were doing with it. Rather than a lot of direct feedback saying, I did this just to let you know, right?
Sure. It is culling through the support emails and stuff
Right,
like
yeah.
that. And, oh yeah, we designed it to run with 15. We didn't think you wanted it for 50.
Well, I mean, things like that is there is a limit, but it's much bigger than that about how many people you can edit a single diagram with. But
Sure.
because anything goes on the internet, we have to make sure people can't abuse it to send spam and stuff like that. There's sort of safeguards in place to stop you from spamming lots of people who've never used Coggle before or you've never invited before. So like you can't just send out 100 emails to people we've never sent an email to before at once.
Interesting.
Kind of.
Okay.
I wouldn't have thought of that, but you know what?
Yeah.
We can't even send a message 3 times in a row in Valorant while we're playing and shooting people in a first-person shooter. So it makes sense you'd want to protect your web platform.
Well, it's more like whenever, I mean, a lot of both like that sort of usability versus security trade-off where we have to decide when we make a feature available, can it be used for someone to send spam or do something bad? Because eventually everything on the internet's someone's gonna try and use it for something that they shouldn't. So
there's a lot of truth in all of that.
Yeah,
and we have to deal with some of that. In fact, keeping students in line in certain platforms and stuff and making sure that they don't, the big word out of 2020 was Zoom bombing. The idea that folks would use Zoom for inappropriate purposes. We've all been using web communications for maybe decades. We might be able to say decades now. And it takes 1 year where everyone's on the platform to ruin it.
Yeah. So, it's like, for example, like you can share Coggles to edit with a link, like sort of in a similar kind of Zoom kind of way. But one of the reasons that's restricted to be a paid feature is because it's a sort of feature people have to use responsibly. They can't just post the link on the web publicly accessible, because then someone will discover it and log in and write bad things all over their diagram, right?
Right.
And it, like restricting that to a paid feature kind of elevates the level of caution and level of competence maybe of the users who are going to use it.
Sure.
Okay.
Wow.
Another of those trade-offs.
Now,
cool.
The idea of a software as a service is not novel right now, but you are, I think, like we talked about it, I don't know, during the interview or before the interview, but we talked about it in the sense that you're trying to be laser focused. So in a lot of spaces, SaaS options, software as a service options are saying, let's get broad, let's integrate with 15 different other platforms. Do you have any I know you got to be careful with, but is there anything on the like horizon here whether you're excited about a change, an integration, anything, or are you keeping it still just Coggle focused, maintain the product?
So we have, we would like to add more login options, right?
Okay.
Like we have, Google, Microsoft, Apple as the main ones. And then for the organizations, like the business sort of plan, we have single sign-on as well.
Sure.
And that suits most people, but we would like to add more. And the limiting factor there is really the availability and stability of the services, so that we can integrate with them.
The other end. You've got the practice down of doing it. You just need to be sure the other end is safe.
We support multiple ways of logging in, right? So that, as far as we're concerned, that works mostly done. It just needs the other end to say, oh yeah, you can provide login for our service. Here's how you do it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey, these are just a couple of insights we hope that are helpful for folks who don't get to hear from the founder of a company too often. We're really excited about Coggle and its functionality, but we really are also just had a great time today with you, James. I appreciate it. You had offered something to us before, so you've got a discount link? Or...
Oh yeah. Right. Well, so we have a 50% educational discount on just, it's like anybody can get it anytime by emailing us.
Awesome.
It's for the yearly personal plan, which is normally $50 a year, but it's $25 a year with a discount. And I just made a link so you can go to coggle.it/go/hightech.
Awesome.
And that'll get applied automatically instead of having to email us.
Saving yourself an email, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Cutting down one of those emails.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Josh will make sure, we'll get that link in our notes, and Josh does all of our Notion web page design, so he'll have that in the page.
Yeah, we'll definitely drop that in for people. Yeah.
We really appreciate that. This has been the first interview with the High Tech Podcast. We really appreciate everybody listening in, and we'll sign off here before we wrap up the episode.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Wow, I am really blown out of the way by that experience, okay? This is the beginning of interviews for us at High Tech. Everything that we do is a learning experience. We really appreciate James taking the time with us today to dig into some of the past and present of what Coggle's doing. We hope as well that their future is fantastic. Josh, What did you think about seeing the man behind the curtain kind of thing? What was that reaction for you?
I think so you made a comment obviously in the interview that they try to make themselves look like a big tool. I like when he was like, there's only two of us, I was like, I didn't know how to process that information because I'm so used to function. Like, you looking at the site, I did like a full review of the tool at our institution to like implement it, and like they don't come across that way. Like, I've seen bigger companies that look way jankier than what they're doing, and there's literally two people. So I felt a little like in Oz. And the curtains being pulled back. Yeah. It was like, oh, there's just a guy there. That's weird.
Way
That's
jankier.
Not what I expected.
You heard it here first, folks. Way jankier. That's it. Yeah, and I was just really, I was really encouraged. Like, he's just a chill dude. Wants to have a good conversation. Cool. Love his accent. Would love to be able to interview more folks with that kind of UK accent. Love it.
Fun takeaway, guys. High Tech Podcast won't interview you unless you got a UK accent.
Yeah, there you go. So. Or on the other side of this, if you would like to be interviewed, just have an accent, and we will interview you. That's
it's simple. Yeah, that's all we need.
It's easy. And no, but it was just really cool as well to hear his focus on, I think, the sustenance or the the maintenance of his product over time. Like, I think he was saying they've been around for 8 years or something like that, right? And they really don't try to make their product brand new every day. They try and make sure that it's a good product through and through, which is encouraging. We've been through the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good takeaway from this, because I know he commented a couple times, he's talking about software development and stuff, and obviously we talk about education, but I think the application of this one, it's great just to learn what a tool's doing, guys. We use tools, and I think we don't get to peer behind the curtain a lot on what the developers are actually doing and where their heart is, why the tool existed. But a good application takeaway, because I love user experience. I love talking about that type of stuff, and I think it has a lot of implications for education, especially in an online space. And I think what he's talking about how they don't just do a whole bunch of things because people ask them to do it. They carefully analyze how that's going to work for their tool. I think there's a lot of application for how we implement tech in education, how we need to carefully look at our courses and what we're doing and ask what is it that can fit into what we're trying to do that's going to enhance this, and how do we do that? How do we put that in? Not just putting in a bunch of features, putting in a bunch of things that we want to do, but carefully laser focusing what we're going to do. And I think that really came across in their heart for what they're doing in Coggle, and that's why I think Coggle is such a smooth tool to use.
It works every time
because they have that focus, and we could take some of that home in education, I think, when we're doing stuff.
Yeah, I do know that I've got plenty of faculty. I had a design question come up at the end of the semester here. I mean, he was thinking about fall. It wasn't let me try and do something in 2 weeks, right? But it's towards the end of the semester. He reached out. He's like, hey, this is my pedagogical issue. Can we kind of do a quick review, discuss some things I could do? I was like, yeah, let's take a look. And in some ways, I was really encouraged. He was looking for some bells and whistles, but my solutions for him and the ones he took to heart were really simple, just adjustments, things that made his learning experience easier for the students. We didn't have to redo everything. You just had to make what he had a little different, a little easier to use and understand how we're going to work through it. So I really appreciate that. Like, we all need to maintain. This podcast is a demonstration of us trying to maintain, and of course we're learning a lot of new things, but every week when I sit down to edit, I've got to take the same practices to mind. Like, all right, get the content out, get the volumes better, get get some of the fluff moments out, edit something that we shouldn't have said out. Those are the things that we got to stay on top of it. No, I don't know what you're talking about. So that's, I really appreciate that. It was really encouraging to me just to talk to another young professional like that. But then it's also awesome to know that like Coggle wants it to be free for free users. They want to be able to, let people use it to meet their needs, and they're happy to have some paying customers. Great. But that keeps their lights on and takes care of things for them. So that's really awesome, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I've learned anything else, it's that all software companies start from starting to create submarines. That's what I've learned. That's the piece that's gonna stick with me. How Coggle started. That's that
he wanted to be into aquatics, right?
Yeah, aquatics. Yeah, it didn't a submarine. Okay, I'm simplifying this situation because I know nothing about aquatics other than water is wet. Yeah. That's
when James potentially listens to this. We're sorry. We know it's not all about submarines, but isn't it?
Isn't it though?
Yeah, it's about submarines. We know you want to build submarines.
That's definitely gonna be the first mind map I create after this podcast episode is over. Yeah.
Coggle
about submarines.
Oh,
yes,
submarines.
It's gonna be yeah, I like that better. Coggle, and then just like a branch off to submarines. It's gonna be what we're doing.
I love it. Well, we really hope that you've enjoyed this first interview. We've already begun lining up others. We intend to dig into each of the tools and apps that we present. So we want you to have a full and well-rounded perspective on how these apps are coming together, how you can use them in your classroom. Again, always in that context of harnessing technology for the best use, whether it's for your virtual or physical classroom. Thanks, folks, and we will see you next time.
See ya.